Hello, everybody, and welcome in to another episode of the Couch GMs podcast. It is Thursday, April 3rd, 2025. I'm your host, George Kurt, joined by the one and only Cody Roadcap. Cody, I'm lost here, as it seems, but it's draft season. It's your favorite time of the year. How are you doing?
I'm doing good. I'm excited. Like you said, draft season, going to start breaking down prospects, thinking about guys that might be on our dynasty teams or heck, even our redraft teams
Or our
and
favorite teams?
or our favorite teams too. And if you've been a long time listener to the show or just know me personally, we're talking about my favorite position group today, especially when it comes to prospects in the draft. So
Running backs?
exactly, running backs.
I'm just kidding. It's wide receivers today. Cody loves his wide receivers. He would draft a wide receiver every pick in the NFL draft as well as fantasy drafts.
Yeah, I mean, honestly, look at our main dynasty league. I think I have 5 first-round rookies over the last 5 years, so going great.
Yeah, I mean, and I've probably got 3 or 4 in the same exact boat as you, and we're both missing the playoffs every year. It's working really well.
The forever rebuild. We're taking the talk a little basketball here. We're taking the 76ers approach to a rebuild. You got to get worse
I
before
mean,
you
at
get
least they
better.
made a second round of the playoffs, right?
Hey, they were able to draft Ben Simmons and Markelle Fultz, and hey, they got Joel Embiid, so they got something out of that.
Yeah, they got some playoff appearances out of it. We'll save the basketball talk for the Couch GMs basketball podcast coming probably never, but we never know.
I mean, I'm ready to talk Pistons all day.
You and only you, probably.
That is not fair.
At least here. I don't know. You can find some other Pistons fans to talk with you. I don't know. Make sure you follow us at the Couch GMs, Facebook, X, Instagram, TikTok to get even more football news than you get out of our show here. And you can always DM us with any comments or questions that you have about the draft, about dynasty leagues, whatever it might be. Make sure you're watching us live Thursdays at 6:30 East, and you can ask us questions live. We'll talk with you on the air. But a couple things to hit before we talk NFL draft. Cody, what's happening? We mentioned rule changes a little while ago. We actually had votes on many of those rule changes. A couple of things actually were passed. Why don't we just go over some of the things that happened? First off, playoff overtime rules were officially moved over to the regular season, but they will still be played in the 10-minute quarter that we had on the previous rules. Do you like the fact that we're going to have both teams possessing the ball now in the regular season?
No, but
You don't.
I've been on this since the beginning. Like, just win the game in the regulation. And I think I talked about when we talked about the rule changes, and not to like talk about another one, but they've also now are making touchbacks to the 35 to encourage more returns. We'll see if teams actually care or not, because when they put it at the 30, teams are like, yeah, whatever. We're still going to give touchbacks. The 35, if you get a touchback, you're basically 15, 18 yards away from a long field goal attempt. So maybe in that sense, if you're going to get the ball starting closer, it's worth, having both teams. I'm still going to wait for a team to hold the ball for 9 minutes and 50 seconds and then be like, well, the other team technically did get the ball. And then we're going to be back in some weird drama anyways.
I feel like all the people that argue the whole like, oh, well, it doesn't matter if both teams touch the ball because if your defense can't make that stop, you don't deserve to win anyway. I feel like that rings even more true if a team holds the ball for 9 minutes and 30 seconds.
Yeah, and don't get me wrong. I said, too, when we talked about this, I just don't like saying every team is guaranteed the opportunity with the ball. I've always said, let's make it an 8-minute quarter and just play it out. Heck, cut 2 minutes off, 8-minute quarter. At the end of it, if we're tied, we'll go into another overtime, whatever. But make it an 8-minute quarter and go from there. The whole both teams get to touch the ball. Nothing can happen this year. Might not even happen for 5 years. But there is going to be a game at some point down the line with this rule that a team holds the ball for 9 minutes, or heck, maybe they kick a field goal as time expires and the other team never touches the ball. And then we're going to be like, oh, what do we do now?
Yeah. And I mean, I guess I've been someone who's been more critical in overtime rules than you. And I know you didn't like the previous overtime package, but at least this makes me feel like there is a chance if a team scores, even if they do run the ball, run 8 minutes off the clock. It's like, well, now you're even more at fault because you do have a chance, but your defense not only messed you up by giving up the points, but they also left you no time. Like you really just screwed up that overtime. At least there's a little bit now of like they gave you the chance and you didn't. It's not like, oh, well, now you don't even have the chance. At the same time, like this isn't my ideal answer to the regular season overtime rules either, but I think it's an improvement. It's a step in the right direction, and we're not going to get what we want for regular season overtime, mostly because the NFL and the Players Association want to keep players on the field the least amount as possible. I'm almost surprised that this went through because this is gonna mean more snaps and overtime, even though they limit it to the 10-minute quarter.
Yeah, but they also won an 18th game, which hasn't been passed yet. But so, but
Yeah, and the Players Association keeps saying no one wants an 18th game. Well, that's not true because the NFL itself wants it.
yeah, the 18th game is going to happen in the near future. That's no doubt in my mind. And we can talk about that on a different day. Real quick, before you go through the rest of the rules, and you did a great TikTok explaining all these, but since we get to discuss a little bit, is it still now that you're guaranteed both teams? I know we talked about the whole timing thing. Is the right move to take to kick the ball, like win the toss and kick, defer? I guess would be the right way to say it. Or because of it being 10 versus 15, like in the postseason, you still want the ball first to have the most amount of time.
I think you would probably still want the ball first.
I'm
This is
team kick.
interesting too. Your team kick?
Yeah.
This is interesting too because we've talked about this in the playoffs. And in the playoffs, it's even more different because more time on the clock, you're definitely going to get a possession. Time's going to be less of a factor, even if you give up a long drive. Maybe some of it goes to momentum, though. If you're a team that had that comeback, tied the game at the end, you want the ball right away because you want to, keep riding that momentum to get that touchdown on the board, make it as hard as you can for the other team.
I guess that's a good point. And I think too, with the timing aspect of it, the only reason I'm thinking maybe you still stick with the ball first, say you're stopped, then you get a stop. Now you have a chance to win the game on the third possession. With a 10 minutes, we're thinking 4 possessions would be the max. You would have to think, unless we're just 3 and out back and forth kind of thing. Like if this is a 6-6 game going into overtime, heck, it might just end in a tie, right? Like no one scored all day. But if this is the Bengals Ravens going in 45-45, like maybe that third possession, because I guess that's one thing too. If you score a touchdown and they score a touchdown, it goes to sudden death. So then you would get the third possession, or one and go for
you
2
go
to win
for
the
2.
game.
Yeah. So you know what? Thinking about it in that way too, team kick does have the bonus of sure, maybe your team gives up the touchdown. You need to go down, get the touchdown. You get to go for the 2 for the win. Because especially in the regular season, unless there's some weird scenario where this is happening in week 18 and a tie still gets you in the playoffs, I don't see many teams matching a touchdown in overtime and not going for 2. In the playoffs, it might be a little different. Maybe there's some weird situation where it's like, I just want to extend this game. In the regular season, I don't see it happening.
That's a good point. So I think team kick is the right way to go.
I'm leaning towards team kick. You convince me.
All right. Some other rule changes. Again, George did a TikTok on all of them, so we don't have to spend a bunch of time on it. 2 that kind of go together as well. Talking referees, the sky judge can now pick up flags, but he can't throw them. And this is for clear and obvious. And I feel like this rule is more to appease fans than actually see it happen.
Yeah.
I think it's going to be more like the hip drop tackle that I don't think was called once last year, despite, the whole offseason about it. Like, people were like, well, was it clear and obvious? Like, I hate to bring back Patrick Mahomes and, the calls that he had, but it was like, well, they did touch his helmet, but was it? But, like there's the whole, like that becomes the gray area. And at the end of the day, the NFL is going to be like, we want to stick with the officials on the field. So I don't expect too many flags to be picked up unless you get they call a face mask and like the shoulder grab was actually drawn and like the arm is the reason that the head went across.
Yeah, the 2 situations I thought of that would definitely be, this guy judge is gonna pick these up: face masks and horse collar tackles. because both get called similarly, where it's like, oh no, maybe he just got over the shoulder instead of the face mask or the shoulder pad. Some of those I think are going to get picked up because those get missed at least a couple times a season.
And
Yeah,
I
other
would
than
also,
that, like I don't see any like pass interferences getting picked up unless an official really screwed something up bad.
yeah, those. I mean, we saw that with the. I don't. Is pass interference even on the list of calls that they can overturn? I know it was still a list of, and I feel like pass interference might be too judgmental, like we
Yeah, it
saw with
might
the.
not. They're kind of very sketched out about reviewing and pass interference since their experiment after the playoff debacle.
Yeah, I mean, it's mostly the unnecessary roughness calls, essentially. And I guess
Yeah.
maybe at the start of the season, we'll have to wait and see. Will we see more flags thrown because officials like, if it's wrong, you'll pick it up, or will they still
Mhm.
want to be right? Like, I think it's a whole interesting dynamic.
Yeah, and the only reason I'm not worried about if that does happen is because the Sky Judge system has actually proven they can get through things pretty quickly. Like we've seen situations where they'll review a play and overturn something, and it's almost like they stop the play clock for 10 seconds, it's fixed, it's done. Like it's been actually super efficient. One of the best things that they've done when it comes to like the expedited review, and I don't see it changing too much when you add in this.
Yeah. And then the other one related to the officials is the chain gang is still going to be on the field, but they are going to be the backup in case of emergency. And they're going to use the Hawkeye camera technology that they use in tennis. I believe the UFL is using it right now,
Mhm.
um, and they put out some videos of 0.2 inches short of the first down line. They're able to spot it. So I think this is fascinating. It's long overdue, uh, and it's good all around.
Definitely. Anything to add accuracy to a system that definitely looked like it was made in the 1950s um, is good. And it's something that we have seen have success, not only in the UFL, but in tennis, that like it can be done quickly. And I think that's the biggest thing. Back when we were talking about changing these things, maybe even 5-10 years ago, it was like, this is going to slow the game down so much. This shouldn't. And that's, I think, the good thing about it.
Yeah. So Craig, I know since you did the deep dive into the rules,
Mhm.
is it just first downs or is it all end
As
zone?
far as I know, it's anything spotting, and they would do it like towards a down or an end zone. So I think
Okay.
it's both. I don't think they would use it just to spot the ball in a regular play, but I do believe it's for touchdowns and first downs.
I wonder if we'll get to a point, maybe not this year, if they'll be able to sync it up to like the frame when a guy touches out of bounds to where the ball is. Because there's always that gray area of like they're extending
Mhm.
uh as they're going to the side. Like a lot of it, a quarterback runs, right? He runs out behind the stick, but he hands the ball over. Like
Yeah.
I'm interested to see if that becomes into play at all down the line.
I'm sure there has to be something that they can do with that. I don't think they would have put this in if that wasn't a possibility because of how many times you see about guys reaching for first downs, going out of bounds.
And maybe
Um,
that's why they're keeping the chain gang too as like another point of reference
it's
if,
true.
for clarity and whatnot.
Yeah. And this is something that they've had synced up with next gen stats for a few years now. So it's not a completely new technology. They're just able to use it to actually impact the game in live action now.
Exactly.
So, and then two rules that were tabled for potential vote in May at the May meetings the tush push ban, which I heard was an even 16-16 split when it came to voting,
So
and then playoff reseeding.
not to get into conspiracy theories,
Hmm.
uh, but the NFL did not do this vote because the NFL now wants the tush push banned.
Yes.
So they knew it wouldn't pass. So now we're going to get 6 more weeks of trying to uh, combat it. And what I did think was interesting, I think Mark Schlereth is the one I actually heard brought it, and he probably heard it from someone else too. Uh, with the whole tush push thing, I know there's been a lot of back and forth, like injuries, whatnot. Is there actually evidence? No, there hasn't been, but if there is, they're more likely to be severe because of the posture they're in. I get all that. But I did think it was interesting. He was like, a couple years ago, we took away being able, and this is probably more than a couple years ago at this point, but they
Hmm.
took away the ability for, defenders and defensive linemen to push each other through on like field goal blocks. So like
Yeah.
we took it out of special teams, So, but we're allowing the offense to. So there becomes a little bit of disparity in the rules as well. We've talked ad nauseum about our thoughts on that, but I would say it's tabled for now. But I'm at the mindset now that I fully expect to be banned whenever it officially passes vote. They'll keep delaying it until they convince enough owners or enough owners sell their teams to new people, and they can make it pass.
Yeah, I'm agreeing with the way that it went down. It definitely seems like it's not going to be in next season. I think part of it's going to have to be like, what concessions do they have to make that vote pass? Like, maybe it's the tush push, but not in the way we've seen it before, like kind of like how you and I mentioned before, or it's just a change in wording where it's like you can't push somebody in a certain time frame after a snap, because I don't think they want to take out the scrum play where the running back kind of gets pushed by the offensive lineman 5 yards down the field. And like, cause that's part of the reason why they brought pushing for the offense back. Cause they like that before, that used to be a dead ball as soon as like someone got stacked up and then the offensive line started pushing them forward. They don't want to take that out of the game, I don't think. So it's just going to be some weird ruling where it's like you can't push right after the snap or some formation change. It's going to be, I think it's going to be changed. It just doesn't know how.
Yeah, but Saquon Barkley fans can rejoice because he likes to get stopped at the one, but without the tush push, maybe they'll at least turn around and hand him the ball.
Yeah.
And maybe we're wrong. Maybe it will come back, and we'll have to wait and see in May.
I'm interested to see also, because you know it's going to happen at least a few times, how Jalen Hurts can run the traditional quarterback sneak, because that's still going to happen.
Yeah, for sure. And that's why I think the whole thing needs to come down to alignment. Again, like, I mean, you look at the tush push play versus how the Chiefs line up on 1st and 10 or like 2nd and 15, right? Like the offensive line have like a 2-yard gap. Like, let's narrow that down. It has to be this consistent across the board.
Yep, exactly. So we'll keep an eye on how that plays out in the future. I also said playoff reseeding tabled for May. I have no idea if they even had a vibe check on how close or not close this was to passing, but I know there was a lot of teams that were still arguing for the advantage for division winners. So I know it wouldn't have passed, but I don't know how close it was.
For sure. And then we have some actual NFL news. Oh, one other slight rule change. It's not really a rule change, but if you're a Hard Knocks fan, they took out the stipulation that playoff teams can't be on it. So now playoff teams can be added, and they essentially replaced that with you can't be featured in season and off season in the same year. So basically just trying to get more teams involved, and maybe a team like the Eagles who just won the Super Bowl could be in line to be on Hard Knocks because they took out the playoff rule. So that's interesting to say.
Makes sense to me, seeing how there's been other documentary series about teams that have been in the playoffs. And example like Quarterback, which was actually renewed by Netflix. If you didn't hear, there's going to be a second season of Quarterback. Has some guys who have been in the playoffs before too. So
yeah, not to go off on a tangent, but Kirk Cousins will be in that one again, being in Atlanta. If you don't remember the first season, that was Marcus Mariota end up getting benched for Desmond Ritter, and then Cousins now get, like, if you're the Atlanta starter, don't be in quarterback.
Seriously, that's what we've learned. But it was him, Joe Burrow, and why am I forgetting who the third was?
Joe Burrow, him, and why am I'm forgetting the third as
I was just going to try to give a preview to the fans on what to look forward to, and I completely dropped the ball. So I'm sorry. I put you on the spot too.
Yeah. Why can I not remember? I am struggling so hard with this. I feel like it was a bigger name. Like, it wasn't a rookie.
Jared Goff. Yeah, there we go.
Yeah. I was like, it's someone in the NFC, but
yeah, Jared Goff. So it should actually be a pretty entertaining show, I think.
Yeah, for sure. Seeing how the Lions, the hot team that lost in the first round. So definitely looking forward to reliving that. Speaking of the Lions,
go ahead.
Jahmyr Gibbs changed his number. He'll be number 0 now. So that's some fun stuff. Jameson Williams will be number 1.
Someone that's been that. I can't even say that. Never mind. Debo changed his number before this last year, and he's an established player. So I can't even say that established players haven't changed their numbers too much.
So, yeah, looks like there's a bunch of Lions that changed the number, but the big one was Jahmyr Gibbs to 0. I like it.
Yeah, that's going to be different. It's It takes some getting used to. But now anyone out there that has a Jahmyr Gibbs jersey with his old number, you got a little bit of a relic there.
But the Lions are about to print more money. But the big news is the big contracts to talk about to happen today, literally as we're recording that. Trey McBride and Geno Smith getting some contract extensions. The Geno Smith one kind of caught me by surprise since he just got traded, but he gets a 2-year, I forget, $60-some million deal, or 66 guaranteed. Yeah, 85 million, 66.5 guaranteed. And then Trey McBride, he got a 4-year extension, which honestly McBride might be, he's at least on the argument for best tight end in the league at this point, and he's definitely the young and up and coming one. I mean, because you're debating him between like Kittle, Andrews, Kelsey, and they're on the other side. So it's like him or Laporta. Which one do you think is better? And that's kind of where we're at the tight end room. But 4 years,
I was going to say him or Laporta, and then the other guy's Kincaid, and he hasn't hit that ceiling like those two have.
Yeah, for sure. And McBride, great signing for Arizona.
Definitely. And he got 4 years, 76 million. So really cashing in there, but well deserved. We've been keeping an eye on Brandon Ayuk in San Francisco, and his deadline hit where he got his bonus, and he is expected to stay with San Francisco for another season. Not shocking once we saw that deadline hit, but eventually they got to trade this guy.
I didn't think they were going to trade him to begin with. Like, they traded Debo. They weren't going to, like,
people I don't know. They look like we're going to go full, like, I shouldn't say rebuild, retool for a second there. And they have some other options there that they could have.
I mean, he's coming off an injury. His value is at an all-time low. Like, you're already, going to pay him, like, and not that $20 million isn't a lot of money, but it's chump change for NFL organizations. So the Ayuk one never really made a ton of sense with me. Give him another year to get healthy. If Purcell continues to break out like he did at the end of the season, then maybe look to move him on next year. But yeah, this team is still, like, their window is, I don't want to say closed, but it's like barely hanging open. So they need to try to win now.
They still have the weapons on offense because they still have CMC, hopefully coming back healthy. They still have, like you said, Pearsall on the up and up. Juwan Jennings had a breakout year. And then they signed DeMarcus Robinson. So they still have the weapons. Kittle as well. It's not like the window's closed.
Yeah, they're just getting older. So
yeah.
And health has been an issue for them in the past.
And then last bit of news, highly hyped quarterback Joe Milton for the New England Patriots was traded to the Dallas Cowboys just, I believe, yesterday.
I think that happened
Cowboys
right
trying to find
morning.
a backup that's more reliable.
Yeah, I actually don't understand this trade from the Patriots perspective. Milton, like, they obviously have May, but Milton came in, he looked really good in the preseason. Then he came in week 18 because they didn't play May, had another really good game, and all they got back was a 5th-round pick, and they're giving a 7th up as well. Now, granted, they took Milton in day 3 last year, but I feel like he's shown enough upside that, if you give him the preseason and he has another strong one and a quarterback goes down, like, could you have gotten a day 2 pick for the upcoming draft? Or what happens if May gets hurt? Now you're turning it over to Josh Dobbs, who obviously has been around, but at least you had the young upside with Milton. So I don't really understand the trade from the Patriots perspective, but at the end of the day, it's a backup quarterback. We're talking late round picks. It doesn't need too much time and attention.
No, the only thing that I'll counter you on is, he had a great preseason. It's preseason. He had one great game. We've seen a lot of guys do that before and not really pan out. It's still a major question mark, but I do think they could have gotten more value if they had waited for a situation more desperate and after you had a little bit more on tape from him.
Yeah, and I understand, like, you brought in that guy, and maybe it was maybe Drake May was, I don't want to put that out there, but maybe Drake May was feeling some pressure for some reason, or maybe they wanted to make it known to everybody that Drake May, maybe the fans were like pushing for Joe Milton or something. Like, I don't know. I'm not a diehard Patriots fan. I'm not on their Reddit, whatever, but especially not during the offseason. but it is worth noting, like, the whole move surprised me when it was only a 5th round pick and they were also giving up a 7th round pick. Like, I feel like the quarterback position is too valuable to basically give away a guy that has at least showed something on an NFL field. Like, not to diss the Cowboys, but did they not trade like a 4th round pick for Trey Lance a year ago, who had
Yes.
barely any experience? Like, so
This is honestly a better move than the move they made for Trey Lance. This is probably the best trade
100%.
I've seen the Cowboys make in the last 5 years.
I agree. And again, we're talking about a backup quarterback that hopefully never plays, and
Yeah,
we're not even talking about that. But if he has another good, again, if he has another good preseason, the Cowboys could get their 5th round pick back in the offseason. So it's basically taking them on for free.
exactly. So good move by the Cowboys. Interesting direction for the Patriots, but they still have their QB1 in house. So hopefully it'll work out fine for them. Any other news you can think of before we move on?
No, sir.
All right. Why don't we start breaking down the 2025 NFL draft and start with the wide receivers?
Pretend there's a bumper because I forgot to make one.
Nice job, Cody. Staying
Okay.
strong.
I am staying true to myself, and our fans are just wanting to hear you hum one more time.
I got you.
That's even the old bumpers too. Woof.
Yeah, right. I don't
Throwback.
have the new bumpers like down enough to really even replicate it.
All right, but we're talking wide receivers today. Like we mentioned at the show, one of my favorite positions to break down. I get excited about a lot of these guys when they're coming to the draft, and I think fit is a big portion of this. And we're going to talk about fits in a little bit. But we have 10 guys that we're going to talk on at different lengths, and then there's the big asterisk in the whole class, and that is one Mr. Travis Hunter. Is he a primary corner that might get some offensive snaps? Is he a primary receiver that might get some corner snaps? Is he truly going to be a both way player? We'll have to wait and see. I tend to believe he is going to get his start at corner. So I'm removing him from this list. But if he goes number 4 to New England needs, I mean, I know they did just, go after Stephon Diggs, but they could use another guy as well. But for this conversation, we're going to assume Travis Hunter is a cornerback and pretty much take him off our list of the top 10 guys.
And I think that's fair. And I do think the one place he could go that I would really think wide receiver is New England, like you said. So way to go there. And we're going to find out what a team thinks of him when he gets drafted on draft night. I don't think we're going to find out sooner. When I find out, did he get announced as a wide receiver or a defensive back?
Yeah, unless for some reason, unless they write it down both ways or just be like athlete, like how they describe it.
I've never heard someone announce like that, but I feel like they could.
I feel like there was this is going to be a deep pool. Denard Robinson, former Michigan quarterback, went to Jacksonville. I don't know if he was announced at the draft, but at some point on the Jaguars depth chart, I feel like he was just named like offensive weapon or something because he wasn't like he was a quarterback, but he only ran the Wildcat or something like that. So I believe they called him offensive weapon. Obviously, I would tend to believe receiver, but that's the only other time I can remember someone having a non-traditional designation.
Yeah. It says on here he was drafted as a running back.
So he's drafted as a running back, but he also played quarter. So I'm pretty sure at some point he was listed as offensive weapon.
The Jaguars envisioned him as an offensive weapon, but apparently he was announced. I could be wrong here, but as a running back.
Okay, we'll have to wait and see what Travis Hunter, and I don't think we'll be waiting long. I think he's a top 5 pick lock for sure.
Top 5 pick lock, definitely. Unless there's a major run on quarterbacks that I'm not expecting. But we're going to have your mock draft coming out soon too. So keep an eye out for that. If you're
there might not even be 2 quarterbacks in the top 5.
Yes. And I think that's much more of a realistic look at this draft compared to last year's draft.
All right, but diving into the wide receivers, there's some tiers that I think we're going to get into. Really, there's 3 tiers in the top 10, I would say. Some of these guys are much closer than we anticipated, but there's a big 4 at the top, and all 4 might get drafted in the first round, Maybe the fourth guy goes very early, top 5 picks in the second round kind of thing. But the first guy we're going to talk about in tier 1 is, I'm just calling him Tet McMillan because I don't know how to pronounce his first name. He's from Arizona. He's a 6'4" monster. A lot of people have been comping him to a guy like Drake London. He still has deep speed, but he's a little bit stiff in the hips, so he's not as twitchy, which is okay for a guy his size.
Yep.
I think he could, do very well as like a T. Higgins type of player. And I think that would just be like who's his complement. So I'm actually really fascinated because I know there's been a couple of mocks that have come out the last couple of days of him going number 12 overall to Dallas. And I'm like, that him being a number 2 to CeeDee Lamb would make a ton of sense. How does that affect fantasy if he already goes in being a number 2? Maybe he's not the top guy. And I think he has potential to be a true number 1 guy, but might be more well suited for a high volume number 2 like a T. Higgins or a Devonta. They're different players than Devonta and Jalen, but just that kind of volume.
Yeah, but I do think he does have the upside to be a wide receiver 1. Interesting to me, some of your comparisons. The comparison here is Drake London that I'm seeing on a lot of places. I think that's pretty fair. Bigger bodied guy that has the speed but isn't necessarily known for it. That's a good way to put it. I never thought of him going to a place to be a wide receiver too, but I guess he could fall deep enough into the first round to be in a situation like that.
Yeah, I think people have gotten a little bit scared with him just because he's like right on the brink. He's like in the 4.5s for the 40. And I know once you start getting to 4.6 at wide receiver, people start to get scared. He's tall. He's not as quick back and forth. A lot of stuff that we saw with DK Metcalf when he was coming out, another big bodied wide receiver. He was faster than Tet was, although Tet at one point was clocked at 22 miles an hour this past college football season. So that he definitely has some wheels on him. And I think the interesting thing for me is just where he goes and how he fits in. Because I think he's a guy that can play any spot. He can play big slot. He can play on the outside. He'll predominantly be an outside receiver. But Drake London, I think, is the best comp for him. And there's some up and down moments in Drake London's early career. And I think it's just worth noting that he's our top wide receiver. And this wide receiver class doesn't feel like there is a true elite number 1. Not saying one of these guys will be. That's the nature of the NFL draft.
Yeah.
But there's not a true elite number 1 home run pick. And Tet McMillan, you asked me in December, he was a top 10 pick lock. And now some places have him being mocked in the mid 20s. So where he lands is going to be one of the more fascinating stories on draft night.
So not like the superstar you're expecting, but there's depth and there's guys who are still going to make an impact. So like you said, this first tier is 4 guys. What else you got in the first tier?
Yeah. So like I said, any of these 4 guys, if you told me they were getting Justin Jefferson type contracts at the end of their 4 years, like they're the next big one, I would believe it. The next guy would be Matthew Golden, kind of a late bloomer in terms of productivity, but he's out of Texas, a big school, had a really big, strong playoff run. That's kind of where he made a big name for himself. Ran the fastest 40, I believe, at the combine at 4.29. Just an electric player, has ball skills. Honestly, I would not be shocked if he's taken higher than Tet come April 23rd or 24th, whatever day the official draft is. I just think he's a little bit shorter. He's still over the 6-foot threshold, but I really like Matthew Golden, his tape. He has good ball skills, and honestly, probably my second favorite wide receiver in the class.
The things that I like that throw flags up for me on this are there are some people that get overdrafted because of speed. There's a lot of smaller speed wide receivers that have had a lot of success, but I feel like most of them are really good route runners as well. And I feel like some of the weaknesses I've seen on Golden are he is inconsistent in his route running. Obviously, something you can teach. You need to have the like of anything. You can't teach speed, you can't teach size, whatever, but you can teach route running. So I'm not going to say like oh bust, but that gives me a little bit of concern, and that's probably why he's not considered that superstar that you're talking about.
Yeah, and honest, if Matthew Golden ends up being the best wide receiver in the class, would not be surprised.
Yeah.
In that, he's a high risk, high reward kind of player. Probably going to be looking at that middle round tier. And honestly, the speed is a good thing, and just his overall makeup. It's just a lack of production early, but he came on strong this year. I know Quinn Ewers, who is a guy that's available in this draft, was not the best quarterback. Couldn't really hit the deep ball. The only issue that I have with Matthew Golden, as I just lost my train of thought of where I was going with that. Yeah, I completely lost it. That's embarrassing. Guess we'll have to move on.
If you think about it, feel free to just bring it up. We've done that all the time. Who else do you have in your first tier of wide receivers?
All right, next guy up is Luther Burden III out of Mizzou. Now, he is one of those guys that when you look at the 2024 tape, 2024 statistics, it wasn't as good as the 2023 tape. And then that starts to ask questions. Why? What changed? What? The dude is lightning in a bottle when the ball's in his hands. Some people think he might only be a slot wide receiver, which is one of the hangups with him. I personally think he is going to be able to play outside. I was not completely bought in to Luther Burden at first. I was Matthew Golden until more recently, and I think Luther Burden is now past him. He has the 4.4 speed. He's just over 6 foot. He's just over 200 pounds, so he has the big body. And honestly, when I watch him, I see DJ Moore. And some people might say, well, DJ Moore is not a true elite number one. He catches a lot of screens. He does a lot of yak, right? Same with Zay Flowers. But I think there's some parts to his game, his route running. He runs a beautiful slot fade that I think he's going to beat a lot of teams with. Some people I've seen compared him to guys like Stephon Diggs. So he is by far the most fascinating prospect, in my opinion, in this class, I think, with the biggest ceiling.
No, I think he's probably, from the guys I've looked at, one of the more fun to watch his highlights too. Just because he is a yak guy. He does a lot of good things with the ball in his hand. But in traffic, that's where the question comes in. But I guess you're going to say that about pretty much every receiver that kind of lacks some size. But you said DJ Moore as a comparison. I was thinking Garrett Wilson. I mean, Garrett Wilson has shown that he can catch some balls in traffic, but he's a little bit more of that in space guy as well.
Yeah, I mean, obviously, if you're a Packers fan, I just did a video for Cheesehead TV, top 5 players. Luther Burden was on that list. There's a couple highlights in that clip. There's one game where he completely turns himself around on a guy and adjusts the ball. For his size, he has good late hands. He can go up and get the ball. It's just those question marks of what happened, why his production went down last year, and then is he only a slot guy? Because that's the reason he'll fall is because some teams will view him as slot only, and that will push him further and further down the board.
Definitely. But even though his stats did go down, he still got first team All SEC in 2024. So he still did show out to an extent.
Yeah. And honestly, like, we're talking about some of these guys not even getting drafted in the first round, but when wide receivers are starting to get $40 million a year, like, that 5th-year option is going to be a big, like, it used to be just like we need a rookie quarterback on a contract. You're going to start needing rookie receivers on rookie contracts the way they're getting paid these days. Heck, Khalil Shakur got $15 million a year. Tutu Atwell got $10 million a year. Like, money, wide receiver is where the money's at the moment. And that might be the reason Travis Hunter is like, hey, I'm playing wide receiver. But my last guy in the top 4, the big 4, is Emek Ibuka from Ohio State. He's a guy, he's an interesting case study as well, just because, like, he's always been the number 2. Like, he was the number 2 to Chris Olave. Then he was the number 2 to Garrett Wilson. Then he was the number 2 to Jeremiah Smith, who is arguably the best wide receiver in college football right now. Like, he's just, I don't know if that's a knock, right? Like, he's on a good loaded team. These are great players. Justin Jefferson was the number 2 to Jamar Chase. They're both elite players. Ironically, if you look at relative athletic score, which I've talked about before, is just like a grading system based on your athletic testing and where you rank. His athletic testing is almost identical to Justin Jefferson. And the talks are the same. Is he a slot only guy? That was a conversation we were having with Justin Jefferson, why he went so late. Obviously, Justin Jefferson has proven he can't. I'm not saying Emeka Ibuka is going to become the next Justin Jefferson. I'm not putting that pressure on him. And I don't even know if Emeka can play as much outside as Justin Jefferson, but I think there's a lot to like there. And I think, yes, he's lived in some other big name shadow at Ohio State, but it's still Ohio State. They turn out productive wide receivers, even though we should not be helmet scouting in that case. But I really like Emeka, and he is the biggest question mark. But again, any of these four could be the best coming out of the draft class, and he might be the guy that's often forgot about, but I think he has every right to be up there.
And I mean, the only reason why I feel like helmet scouting to an extent makes sense here is because you're talking about he was always a wide receiver too, but he's in a wide receiver school. The guys you talked about are just elite wide receivers that he's been behind. So he might be one of those guys that didn't show out super well in college, or like he was good, but he was always overshadowed, but then comes into the NFL, gets in the right situation, and ends up being a stud. You see hidden talents like that all the time, and this almost seems like it could be one of the more obvious ones, but obviously there's a risk to it as well.
Yeah, and I think fit is a big thing for me. I feel like he's probably the safest pick, right? But like I don't know if he complements Lad McConkey well, like if the Chargers wanted to go get a wide receiver, right?
Mm-hmm.
I don't know if he makes him as much sense in Dallas like Tet does, because he has a very similar skill set to CeeDee Lamb. But maybe ends up in Los Angeles to kind of replace Cooper Kupp, and then as Devontae fades out, he steps into that role as the other outside guy. Like there's a lot of question mark. Like he would make a ton of sense staying in Ohio and Cincinnati, complementing those other two players. He has the size, he has the speed, but those are my big four.
And if Cincinnati spends that kind of draft capital, assuming he goes first, second round on a receiver instead of a defensive player, we are really seeing a lot of points scored against them.
Or an offensive line. They could also.
Or offensive. Yeah, I'll take an offensive lineman as well. You're right.
Yeah, definitely. But next three, I'm going to kind of group in together. They're my next tier. These are my day 2, maybe day 3 kind of guys. Jaden Higgins, Iowa State, Alec Ayumanor from Stanford, and Jack Betch of TCU. These are your bigger body guys that still have speed, really good athletes, quote unquote smaller school guys, not like D2, or they're still Power 5, but they're not your Ohio State, Texas, like we talked about some of the other names. Productivity, Jack Betch, Senior Bowl MVP. I think is an interesting fact about him. I know some teams put a lot of stock into the Senior Bowl because that's their first real look to look at them against players up close. Alec Ayumanor is a name that I will stumble on for the rest of my days. But he is
out very well.
He's a big body guy, your typical X wide receiver on the outside. And if you're like, that name kind of sounds familiar, just go YouTube his highlights against Colorado 2 seasons ago. I believe it was like 249 yards and 3 touchdowns.
Oh my gosh.
And then Jaden Higgins, he is a guy that I'm not 100% sure why he's not higher, like in terms of rankings and stuff like that. He checks a lot of boxes, but I think there's just, a little bit of worry about him. But he might be the second round find that everyone's like, how did we let him get out of the first come 2026?
Is it a Big 12 thing? The fact that they both played against what you would consider slightly lesser competition? I know that like the SEC, Big 10, those bigger power conferences tend to get more clout.
Yeah, I don't know. I mean, like I said, I don't know because like when you take a step back and you're like size 6'4", got it, 4.4 speed, got it. Like he has the potential upside to be a quote unquote number 1. He plays on the outside. College football is getting smaller and smaller. You're losing a lot of these big name wide receivers for these slot guys like Emeka, Luther. They're predominantly slot guys. Jaden Higgins is your next tier of outside wide receivers, and he'll be a fascinating name. And honestly, he has started to climb up some draft boards, and I would not be surprised if he does sneak into the end of the first round. Or an early day 2 kind of guy. And maybe, Michael Pittman might be a decent comp for him if you wanted a name to think about. Never a very good wide receiver, never truly elite, but a solid number one, went middle of day two. A lot of similarities there.
Definitely. And I'll just say my favorite of this group of three is Jack. Is it Betch or Beck? I feel like I've heard both.
I say Betch. I don't know if it's pronounced Beck. I think he's one bad Betch, and I just like to say that.
I am using that from now on. We'll obviously find out when he gets drafted. A lot of times with names like that, they'll ask what's the correct way to go. But he's my favorite of the group because I do think TCU wide receivers get a little bit of a bad rep because there's been a lot of them that come out with a lot of hype and then just kind of fall flat. But he feels different to me. Not only did he do well in the Senior Bowl, he's a different kind of receiver than you normally see come out of TCU.
Yeah, I think, again, I like Jack Betch is going to be a value wide receiver for a team that this is a deep defensive line class. It's top heavy at edge. Like, get your defensive lineman early, get Jack Betch in the second round, and you're cooking with gas.
I like it. So that is 8 down, I believe. 2 more to go. What's your last tier looking like?
All right. So there's a bunch of names we can put here, and we'll talk about a couple other ones, but the one to round out our quote unquote top 10, Isaiah Bond from Texas. Fast. He talked a big game, did not run as fast as we expected, but fast, deep threat, has some character concerns. That's one thing to know. So he might be off of a lot of teams' boards just based on that. Nothing illegal to my knowledge at the moment. Just like, it's not like, domestic violence or anything like that. To my knowledge, it's more of just like George Pickens-esque character concerns, right?
Okay. Yeah.
So George Pickens,
Just
really good wide receiver.
like nothing illegal that I know of.
Yeah, that's what I like. We see that sometimes, like, so it's not like some teams will take, like, I believe Jeffrey Lurie even talked to, or Howie Roseman talked about it at the winter meetings. Like, the Eagles don't scout players that if they've touched a woman. Completely understandable. I get that. Isaiah Bond's not in that case, to my knowledge, unless something came out before, since I've looked into him. But, and I'm not saying there's definitely some character concerns, but he's fast. He's an interesting player. I like talking about him because in the new college football game, I was able to keep him an extra year, get him to transfer to Eastern Carolina, put up video game stats with him. So I always have a soft spot in my heart for college football 25 with Isaiah Bond. So, like I have with Logan Thomas, Isaiah Bond, you're the next video game connection I have. But just an overall solid player, has some concentration drop issues, could be tied to some of the how much do you love football questions that you're going to hear a lot about as we get closer to the draft. But difference maker, could be a fun gadget player. And he's taken a lot of visits with a lot of teams, probably to clear the character concerns, but also see how can we, like, give this guy to a Sean McVay or Kyle Shanahan, and they're going to have a lot of fun with them. So
definitely.
Scheme fit is going to be important for him. And then Jalen Royals, another, like, he's probably a slot only guy or predominantly slot guy, but he's fast. Another guy that doesn't have probably the elite traits, but I like as a potential, wide receiver 2, wide receiver 3, day 2 guy that can come in and compete right away.
Yeah, and being the slot guy that can not only, has decent route running, can make separation, he's pretty good at the point of the catch aggressively as well. So he's somebody who definitely has the traits. It's just, he's going to fall because of being primarily a slot wide receiver. But someone's going to get some good value who needs someone in the slot.
Yeah, and, also just talking about their size real quick, Isaiah Bond's only 180 pounds. That's a little bit on the lighter side. Not saying it can't be done. And then Jalen Royals is only 5'11". So those are some of the other knocking points, but he's 5'11", 210 pounds. So he's kind of built like a running back. And, he's probably better at deep speed. But again, round 3 pick for San Francisco to replace the Deebo Samuel role, maybe that's a dream fit for him.
Yeah, that feels like a dream fit to me. Somebody who can work in small space, run after the catch, tough tackle, that kind of, yes.
Yeah, so there's our top 10. George, I could go on and talk about a few more wide receivers, but is there any other guys that you have caught your eye or you want you want to mention?
You hit my top 10, so I'm good. What other names are you thinking?
So just throw some other names out there. This is probably more of your day 3 picks. The first one, Nick Nash out of San Jose State. Essentially the college version of the Triple Crown winner, but an older player. Has some limitations athletically and size, but he produced, right? So can he come in and be a solid wide receiver 2-3 for a guy that they get on day 3? Absolutely. I think he's worth noting. Jack Beck's running mate, Xavier Williams. He's 6'4", 225 pounds, but is extremely fast, deep field stretcher. Think like MVS kind of. Like, I don't know if he'll anything ever, but a valuable piece for somebody. Not so much for fantasy, but just a guy that might be seeing catch a couple deep balls here and there from some teams. Talk about him. I always love to give a shout out to my Virginia Tech guy, Jalen Lane, fun, fast, elite punt returner. And then you pointed this out when we were talking off show, but Dante Thornton Jr. out of Tennessee, another 6'4", 214-pound deep threat. 70% of his receptions were over 20 yards. Average depth of target, 36.8 yards. Let me just 36.8 average depth of target. So a guy that likes to run fast, another guy that might come in and be able to be a deep threat, take the field off. And like guys like Xavier Williams, he might have a little bit more twitch than Dante Thornton Jr., but Dante Thornton as well. These bigger body receivers that can take the top off might be things that we start to see teams need that guy to unlock this cover 2 defense to open things up underneath and get scoring and points up more and more.
It's already interesting when you mention that, just to see how much the run game has affected that, as you have like the resurgence of the running back over the next few years. But maybe that even works onto the fact of some of these speed guys that you see here that have the ability to really break out of this draft class. If defenses have to start playing teams similar to how the Chiefs had to play the Eagles in the Super Bowl after you have a crazy season from a running back, or like how much the teams have to respect the run game of the Ravens if they can get another guy to pop the top off there. Like, I'm interested to see how that is going to favor some of these smaller wide receivers that we're seeing come out of college that you're mentioning, as opposed to like we're used to these dominant guys being the Justin Jefferson, the Jamar Chase, the bigger guys that obviously still have the speed, but it's not the same kind of wide receiver you're seeing featured now.
Yeah, I'm definitely interested to see how this all shapes out. Like I mentioned, I think for a lot of these guys, it's going to be where they get drafted, right? Like everyone is going to look at Buffalo as in terms of fantasy perspective. Do they take a wide receiver? Yes, they took Keon Coleman in the 2nd round last year. Do they take another one this year? Same with the Chargers. I brought them up. Do they look for someone to replace Quentin Johnson or Josh Palmer, those deep threat kind of guys? Like a Matthew Golden would fit great with Ladd McConkey if they want to go that early, but that's Jim Harbaugh. Is he going to take anybody? The Carolina Panthers, they're getting a little bit older up there with Adam Thielen. Could they be in the market? They might be too high of a draft pick to take someone early, but maybe a Luther Burden falls to the top of the 2nd round. Emeka Egbuka falls to the top of the 2nd round, goes to Carolina. Would be interested to see how that one plays out. Does we talked about the Patriots. If they don't go Travis Hunter or they go offensive line first, could they get somebody at the top of the 2nd round that becomes a fantasy darling? So those are just some of the teams that need wide receivers. And honestly, I don't have a real true dream fit. I mean, obviously Luther Burden is my favorite wide receiver in the class right now. So I'd love to see him in Green Bay, but that's just me being a homer. Any dream fits for you?
The first thing I was thinking of is who do I think could go to Green Bay, because I feel like with what they have built there, if they can get a good wide receiver in house, that's our best chance of having like that immediate impact wide receiver for fantasy. So being, the person that thinks fantasy, I was thinking that way. I was leaning if he does fall far enough. I like Tet McMillan there as a complement to what they have, but I don't know if he's going to fall as far down the draft board for Green Bay to have that shot.
Yeah, if Tet's there at 23, I think Green Bay might do it, but I don't think Green Bay takes a wide receiver. I think Green Bay might be in the market though for one of those tier 2 guys, whether that's Jaden Higgins, Jack Betts, or even Alec Ayumanor. But then again, how much fantasy stock you put them in Dynasty? But good thing, week after the draft, we're doing our Dynasty mock draft, I believe, and we'll talk about it then.
Definitely. The only other thing for Fitz, I would be surprised if Isaiah Bond goes anywhere other than San Francisco, Kansas City, or Miami.
Just because of the
speed.
Which honestly, like, he talked a big game, like, but Matthew Golden ran faster.
Yeah.
So it's definitely a fascinating thing to watch. But as always, make sure you are staying up to date with us. And if there's any wide receivers, we have a comment, George. I completely forgot to look at the comments. Oh, there was someone asking us to check out their podcast, which thanks for listening. Maybe we'll check it out. That's our comment. But anything else before we get out of here?
No, I'm excited to keep digging into position groups next week. I think we're talking quarterbacks and tight ends.
Yeah, so mainly quarterbacks because tight ends.
That's why they're paired together. But everyone likes hearing about quarterbacks coming out in the draft class, especially those who need it drafting near the top. So tell your Titans friends, tell your Giants friends, etc. Check us out next week.
Get your Cam Ward's jersey if you're a Titans fan. But we'll talk about that next week. Like I mentioned, these are our top wide receivers. There's a lot of great names. Join the conversation, ask me questions, or just want to talk your favorite prospects. Make sure you're following us on social at the Couch GMs, Facebook, Instagram, Twitter, X, TikTok, all those good places. And I'd love to talk draft because George puts on a show, but doesn't love talking draft as much as I do. And we're going to be back next week talking quarterbacks and tight ends, like he said. We'll see you then. I'm Cody Roadcap. That's George Kerr. Talk to you all in a week.